documented numerous acts of egregious and sadistic cruelty to animals at a Butterball turkey slaughterhouse in Ozark, Arkansas. A terror-exacerbated pandemic could kill millions around the world in less than 24 hours. One study even reiterates that this virus could be the virtual extinction of humankind. PETA found that registered Butterball workers were cruelly slamming live birds in shackles, and one strangled a bird to death. One worker said he likes to kill birds for fun and pointed out he'd punched one in the face.
The day I started, one worker picked up shackled birds and punched them in the necks. I guess he was bored or thought it was fun. The same day, another guy told me how he broke a bird's back with his knee, and then he broke her legs after shackling her. I could tell this is going to be a horrific investigation. At this plant, about 50,000 birds were shackled and slaughtered every day. Day after day, workers would carelessly grab birds from coops and slam their weak legs into shackles. It's a violent process. The birds are scared, and flapping their legs often break. Live birds often get caught in their coops. Once when a bird's leg got caught, one worker just ripped it right off of her body.
Mistreating animals is considered a sin in Islam. A Muslim is responsible for the care of animals so much that an ill-treated animal will testify against the one who abused it on the Day of Judgment. Islam forbids branding animals and killing them in vain, such as for sport. The Prophet Muhammad forbade people to capture birds, burn anthills, and whip animals. Even in slaughtering animals for food, Islam requires that the slaughtering be done according to Islamic procedure, which is humane and aims to cause the animals as little suffering as possible.
Against the metal bars of the transport trucks and the coops, and even into the concrete walls. One day, one of the workers swung a bird like a baseball bat into the handrail of a staircase. The bird's spine was exposed and there was blood everywhere. This guy just laughed about it.
Scientists say the terrorist component of a pandemic could be devastating to the planet and must be considered in any response planning because it changes the dynamic of a natural pandemic and requires considerably different planning and far more resources to deal with it.
Workers like to play this sick game where they throw carcasses of dead birds at those still alive. These birds were terrified and confused.
People have been led to believe that terrible plagues and terrorist attacks were a thing of the past, but all that has changed.
One day, a worker was taunting another worker by holding a bird by the legs and jerking her back and forth toward him. The second guy just grabbed the bird and punched her.
This is a frightening possibility, and it isn't science fiction. Scientists and officials agree that they're rightfully concerned by a natural pandemic.
Workers are told never to go underneath the trucks the birds arrive on, for any reason at all, even if live birds fall down there. We're told that if we hear a loud popping sound, it's just a bird being squished under a tire. This happens frequently. Remains of dead birds are scattered around from being run over. Workers would regularly punch and kick birds. One guy humped a shackled turkey one day, and another time, another worker was putting his fingers in a turkey's cloaca, which is basically her vagina, while the line was stopped.
They are much more concerned about a pandemic induced or fueled by terrorists.
Workers at this plant were clearly not trained in animal welfare.
What is this, an exercise break?
More than 45 million turkeys are killed each year at Thanksgiving, and more than 22 million die at Christmas, only in the United States.
Some workers even bragged about their abuse.
Some officials say if terrorists get involved, it could get out of control, or at least beyond our capabilities to contain and respond given our current state of readiness. This is the greatest threat we face now. Ben Franklin called turkeys true American originals. He had tremendous respect for their resourcefulness, agility, and beauty. Turkeys are intelligent animals who enjoy having their feathers stroked and listening to music, with which they'll often sing quite loudly. In nature, turkeys can fly 55 miles an hour, run 25 miles an hour, and live up to 4 years. But the story's very different for turkeys on factory farms. They will be killed when they're only 5 or 6 months old, and during their short lives, they'll be denied even the simplest pleasures like running, building nests, and raising their young. The notion of terrorists deliberately infecting themselves with pandemic-causing flu strain isn't new, and it should give pause to public health and government emergency preparedness planners worldwide. Experts in counterterrorism say they can't imagine the consequences of infected terrorists traveling around the world on aircraft with connecting flights. The American magazine Newsweek reported a select group of politicians and aides were given a classified briefing by intelligence community officials on terrorist monitoring due to the concern they could use a bird flu pandemic to cause mass casualties in the United States. A disease pandemic could have more impact than a terrorist attack or a hurricane and might be comparable in scope to a war. A few years ago, the White House offered proposals for how to respond to any pandemic outbreak, including the possibility of bird flu sweeping across the nation. The intelligence community is trying to follow terrorists who have connections with bioengineers. They believe scientists who have connections with terrorists can create a new strain of avian flu or otherwise exploit a flu outbreak. In Australia, counterterrorism authorities have drawn up plans to defend their country against terrorists spreading avian influenza. The Australian Counter-Terrorism Committee has included the use of contagious new bird flu strain as a terrorist weapon in possible terrorist attack scenarios. Americans cannot blame the former President George Bush. In 2006, he requested $7.1 billion to handle bird flu epidemic, but the Congress provided only $3.3 billion. The money was mainly for vaccine and drug research, including $350 million for local health departments. Americans are not prepared to tackle the bird flu epidemic because they have not received financial support and guidance from the federal government. Only a few places like Seattle and New York City are prepared. Others are lagging by an entire year in preparation. Our future is very cloudy. During the anthrax scare of 2001, when envelopes containing the deadly bacteria were mailed to locations throughout the country, 22 people were infected with the disease. 5 eventually died. The incident, occurring shortly after the September 11th terrorist attacks, underscored the vulnerability of the United States to bioterrorism. Those responsible for the anthrax scare were never found. But has our preparedness improved since then? According to many experts, the answer is no. Most influenza experts agree that a pandemic, a deadly global epidemic of some kind of flu, is inevitable. It will be 3 a.m. Americans will not be safe and asleep, but there will be a hot phone in the White House and it will be ringing. A bird flu attack will be happening in the United States. Who will answer the hot phone? Michael Bloomberg will not be at the White House.